Yo, what's up? Quick little Smite Meta update here. Not much has changed really. In the past like week or so. Even with the new patch coming out, not much has changed. As usual, I'm gonna go from carry to solo lane. And so this isn't a repeat of my last video. I'm kind of just gonna do things quickly. So top two hunters are Jingwei, or the top few hunters. Jingwei is definitely the best right now still. She's very powerful with every single build you could do right now. She's incredibly safe, and she's really good late game. Chernobog is still up there. He does the same thing. Very safe, good late game, has really good global rotation ability. Uller has the ability to poke out any lane opponent he has and just kill them outright. He does it in mid, he does it in solo, he does it in ADC. He does it way too well. You build the burst build with the Hydras, the Trans, the Jotuns, all the ability-based stuff, and you just explode people. And as I mentioned last week, Xbalanque and Charybdis are kind of big in this meta. Charybdis, again, is very safe. I would call her Jingwei light. She kind of does the same things Jingwei does in staying incredibly safe and is really good late game, but a little worse. And Xbalanque is a hyper carry in almost every sense of the word. Once he gets online, he can run a game. God forbid you get a lead. You will just run games. Now for supports. This role still sucks. Sucks ass. Like I said last week, if you're good with them, Umoja and Ares, or 2 weeks ago, Umoja and Ares, you should play them. Otherwise, Kumba has kind of made a rise back because he's good at solo tanking. Because a lot of solo laners are picking hunters right now, which in ranked, it really depends on how good you are. You shouldn't be picking it or should be picking it. Kumba's really good at solo tanking. Otherwise, you probably want to look at Ganesha. Geb is still really good against like the Noxes and the E-sets, as well as Fenrir, who's seen a rise. Daji, who's come back into the meta. Otherwise, though, support really sucks, and you really don't want to get stuck playing it, but if you do, you probably want to go with those picks. For mid lane, biggest change. I didn't think I would be talking about this, but the recent changes, before the changes, Yu Huang is kind of nuts. His level 1 and 2 are really, really strong. His first, 5 levels are really good. And then after that, he becomes really weak again. But once he reaches late game, he's incredibly hard to deal with. He can take himself out of the fight for good periods of time. He has good CC, and if you can hit your stuff, you're doing tons of damage. This character is a huge problem late game that needs to be dealt with. If you're allowed to free cast in even one fight, you could change the course of the game with this character. If you're good with him, you should be spamming the hell out of him in ranked. Otherwise, though, the Morgan can still run games with her good rotation ability. With a good rotation ability and her just ability to outright kill people. Poseidon is also pretty decent right now, though you're kind of hit or miss with Poseidon. You feel like you're doing everything or doing absolutely nothing with Poseidon. Baba Yaga is still really strong with a double stacking build. And as for hunters, Uller and Chiron are kind of the big ones that you run in mid. Uller especially, because Uller, like I said before, just kills people really quickly. All right, junglers. For junglers, the auto attackers are still really, really strong right now. Nemesis, Mercury, Kali, Bakasura, all very, very powerful. In lower MMRs, you can run an Arachne and get away with it. In gold, maybe even plat games, you can get away with it, right? But once you hit diamond and you hit 2k MMR, she kind of peters off because players realize how to deal with her. And they realize you don't fight the bug early game. And she kind of falls off. But the rest of them, Mercury is top tier right now. This guy goes nuts and can run away with games, pun intended. Mercury, Nemesis, Daji, Kali, Bakasura, all big picks that you're going to want to look towards. Because they can exert pressure, steal jungle, exert pressure on beads, or be a late game hyper carry in the case of Kali. Kleena is decent. Fenrir has kind of seen a rise back in play. He does a similar thing as he always does. He has a lot of damage early on, and he has Ragnarok, so he forces beads. Daji has Paolo, so she forces beads. Kleena does pretty decently because she's still got really high base numbers, though she's kind of worse than before. Robin is also decent, especially with the amount of certain types of mages. Yu Huang, Poseidon, to name a few. He's really good at killing mages. And he's one of the few things, I don't consider a lot of stuff hard counters in Smite, because a hard counter means there's literally nothing that a person can do in a matchup against them to win. Robin is one of the very few characters that actually has a counter, like a hard counters another one. He hard counters Poseidon. You are never getting hit by Kraken, and you should never die to him because of all of the tools you have are just so good against him, and he can do absolutely nothing. Robin is definitely a sleeper pick that people need to be picking up again. In solo lane, I was going to move out of this, but again, Kleina's still really strong, but I want to talk about something more interesting. This weekend, SOT, Solo Ritual, in the Pro League brought out something interesting in a Robin that is full mitigations, or relies on mitigations. He built something along the lines of this being Spirit Robe, but Spirit Robe's not in the game right now due to a bug. He built something along the lines of this and just didn't take damage. He'd finish it off with a Lonos and then sell his Soul Eater for something else. He'd sell his Soul Eater for something else, and he'd get Sigil of the Old Guard. He took 0 damage, and I've run it in a couple of games before this, and honestly, it slaps. You feel invincible, basically. It is very difficult to kill you. That being said, you have to be decent with the character in the early game to make him work. Otherwise, a lot of the same stuff. King Arthur is still very strong due to Glad Shield and Sovereignty being in the meta. When Sovereignty and Glad Shield are in the meta, you know what? When King Arthur's items are in the meta, King Arthur is in the meta. Right now, Sovereignty and Glad Shield were being bought on him before the changes. And now with the Glad Shield changes, he's strong. This character can get away with a lot and do a ton of damage. Though if you pick him early on in a draft, sometimes he feels like he could be countered out by characters like Poseidon, Artio, and whatnot. But later on in the game, Arthur actually does win this matchup. A lot of people think Artio is a hard counter, but you play around the cripple field, you can just... I know this sounds a little weird, but don't press your spin button, right? Make her use it earlier on. She wants to use it when you're going to clear wave. So use your other 2 buttons. And then once you hit about level 8, she's not going to kill you because you'll have magical defense, and you could just go on her. And it's pretty simple. Cucullin is also decent because when King Arthur's items are good, Cucullin's items are good because Cucullin's items are King Arthur's items. Plain and simple. Bellona, very strong right now. She fights hunters well. She builds she builds like Berserker's Shield, and she builds Sovereignty. She builds a lot of stuff right now that is just good. Bellona up there. Osiris for the same reason as Bellona, pretty much. Mulan is also kind of feels gross right now with Soul Eater. Because Soul Laners have such terrible anti-heal options, or tanks in general have such terrible anti-heal options. Tainted is useless just by virtue of being a bad starter item. Contagion is essentially worthless because all of the other items in that tree are 10 times better than it to build. And you feel like you're wasting an item slot. And Pestilence just feels mediocre at best. You really want to Genjis or an Onis because they give you better things. 20% anti-heal is not a lot. And it doesn't do enough. And then you have to either go Brawlers, Divine, or Toxic Blade. Toxic Blade only works on specific characters. And Brawlers and Divine are substituted out, and you feel like you're substituting out something else, and you feel too squishy in the late game. So characters like Mulan, who can abuse Soul Eater very well, can kind of get away with a lot. Mulan and a lot of the assassins do it as well. I will be remiss if I did not mention that Conduit Gem is kind of nuts on Guardian solos. Jormungandr, Artio, Cerberus does it well, Cthulhu does it well. It gives them clear and the ability to clear their buffs, where it didn't before. So now Conduit Gem, despite not being a tankier starter item, is a viable option for these Guardian solos, and you might see some Mage solos pop up as well. Not sure yet. Realistically, it really depends on the matchup and who they're into. Lastly, Hunters. Uller, I've explained why Uller's good. In the other 2 roles, it's the same reason. Chernobog, high damage, rotation ability, all that stuff. Chernobog gets away with a lot in solo lane, and it's easy to see why. He's late game, he's a hunter, and you blow up objectives. The same thing with a Muzen Cobb does it, I feel like, in mid and solo the best. His ADC is a little bit weaker than the other two, but he does quite a bit of damage, and Stinger is just a great ability. Stinger having 20% physical protection reduction and the 80% CDR upon grabbing it is nuts. He gives a ton of lane pressure. Otherwise, though, that's about it. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.